Hello. How is everyone on this very cold January Tuesday? I thought that this afternoon we would finish chapter 3 of Robinson Crusoe. So let's get started. Let me see where I'm going to start here. So, some merchants have asked him if they would, if he would go with them to Guinea to get some natives. And the question was whether I would go to their supercargo in the ship to manage the trading part upon the coast of Guinea. And they offered me that I should have my equal share of the natives without providing any part of the stock. This was a fair proposal, be confessed, had it been made to anyone that had not had a settlement and a plantation of his own to look after, which was in a fair way of coming to be very considerable, and with a good stock upon it. But for me, that was thus entered and established, and had nothing to do but to go on as I had begun for 3 or 4 years more, and to have sent for the other £100 from England, and who in that time and with that little addition could scarce have failed of being worth 3 or 5 thousand pounds sterling, and that increasing too. For me to think of such a voyage was the most preposterous thing that ever man in such circumstances could be guilty of. But I, that was born to be my own destroyer, could no more resist the offer than I could restrain my first rambling designs when my father's good counsel was lost upon me. In a word, I told them I would go with all my heart if they would undertake to look after my plantation in my absence, and would dispose of it to such as I should direct, if I miscarried. Thus they all engaged to do, and entered into writings or covenants to do so. And I made a formal will disposing of my plantation and effects in case of my death, making the captain of the ship that had saved my life as before my universal heir, but obliging him to dispose of my effects as I had directed in my will, one half of the produce being to himself, and the other half to be shipped to England. In short, I took all possible caution to preserve my effects and to keep up my plantation. Had I used half as much prudence to have looked into my own interest and have made a judgment of what I ought to have done and not to have done, I had certainly never gone away from so preposterous an undertaking. Leaving all the probable views of the thriving circumstance, and gone upon a voyage to sea, attended, excuse me, with all its common hazards, to say nothing of the reasons I had to expect particular misfortunes to myself. But, again, but, I was hurried on, and obeyed blindly the dictates of my fancy rather than my reason. And accordingly, the ship being fitted out and the cargo furnished and all things done, as by agreement, by my partners in the voyage, I went on board in an evil hour, the 1st September, 1659, being the same day 8 years that I went from my father and mother at Hull, in order to act the rebel to their authority and the fool to my own interests. Our ship was about 120 tons burden, carried 6 guns, and 14 men, besides the master, his boy, and myself. We had on board no large cargo of goods, except of such toys as were fit for our trade with the natives, such as beads, bits of glass, shells, and other trifles, especially little looking glasses, knives, scissors, hatchets, and the like. The same day I went on board, we set sail, standing away to the northward upon our own coast with design to stretch over for the African coast. When we came about 10 or 12 degrees of northern latitude, which it seems was the manner of course in those days, we had very good weather, only excessively hot, all the way upon our own coast, till we came to the height of Cape St. Augustino, from whence, keeling further off at sea, we lost sight of land, and steered as if we were bound for the isle Fernando de Noronha, holding our course northeast by north, and leaving those isles on the east. In this course we passed the line about 12 days' time, and were, by our last observation, in 7 degrees 22 minutes northern latitude, when a violent tornado or hurricane took us quite out of our knowledge. It began from the southeast, came about to the northwest, then settled in the northeast, from whence it blew in such a terrible manner that for 12 days together we could do nothing but drive, and scudding away before it, let it carry us whither fate and the fury of the winds directed. And during these 12 days, I need not say that I expected every day to be swallowed up, nor, indeed, did any in the ship expect to save their lives. In this distress we had, besides the terror of the storm, one of our men die of the calenture, and one man and the boy washed overboard. Eh, about the 12th day, the weather abating a little, the master made an observation as well as he could, and found that he was in about 11 degrees north latitude, but that he was 22 degrees of longitude difference from Cape St. Augustino, so that he found he was upon the coast of Guiana, or the north part of Brazil, beyond the river Amazon, toward that of the river Orinoco, commonly called the Great River, and began to consult with me what course he should take. For the ship was leaky and very much disabled, and he was going directly back to the coast of Brazil. I was positively against that, and looking over the charts of the seacoast of America with him, we concluded there was no inhabited country for us to have recourse to till we came within the circle of the Caribbean islands, and therefore resolved to stand away for Barbados, which, by keeping off at sea to avoid the indraft of the Bay or Gulf of Mexico, we might easily perform, as we hoped, in about 15 days' sail, whereas we could not possibly make our voyage to the coast of Africa without some assistance, both to our ship and to ourselves. With this design, we changed our course and steered away northwest by west, in order to reach some of our English islands, where I hoped for relief. But our voyage was otherwise determined, for, being in the latitude of 12 degrees 18 minutes, a second storm came upon us, which carried us away with the same impetuosity westward, and drove us so out of the way of all human commerce that, had all our lives been saved as to the sea, we were rather in danger of being devoured by savages than ever returning to our own country. In this distress, the wind still blowing very hard, one of our men early in the morning cried out, "Land!" And we had no sooner run out of the cabin to look out in hopes of seeing whereabouts in the world we were than the ship struck upon sand. And in the moment, her motion being so stopped, the sea broke over her in such a manner that we expected we should all have perished immediately, and we were immediately driven into our close quarters to shelter us from the very foam and spray of the sea. It is not easy for anyone who has not been in the like condition to describe or conceive the consternation of men in such circumstances. We knew nothing where we were, or upon what land it was we were driven, whether an island or the main, whether inhabited or not inhabited, as the rage of the wind was still great, though rather less than at first. We could not so much as hope to have the ship hold many minutes without breaking into pieces, unless the winds, by a kind of miracle, should turn immediately about. In a word, we sat looking upon one another, and expecting death every moment, and every man accordingly preparing for another world, for there was little or nothing more for us to do in this. That was our present comfort, and all the comfort we had was that, contrary to our expectation, the ship did not break yet, and that the master said the wind began to abate. Now, though we thought that the wind did a little abate, yet the ship having thus struck upon the sand, and sticking too fast for us to expect of getting off, we were in a dreadful condition indeed, and had nothing to do but to think of saving our lives as well as we could. We had a boat at our stern just before the storm, but she was first staved by dashing against the ship's rudder, and in the next place she broke away and either sunk or was driven off to sea. So there was no hope from her. We had another boat on board, but how to get her off into the sea was a doubtful thing. However, there was no time to debate, for we fancied that the ship would break in pieces every minute, and some told us she was actually broken already. In this distress, the mate of our vessel laid hold of the boat, and with the help of the rest of the men, got her slung over the ship's side, and getting all into her, let go and committed ourselves, being 11 in number, to God's mercy in the wild sea. For though the storm was abated considerably, yet the sea ran dreadfully high upon the shore, and might be well called Den wilde zee, as the Dutch call the sea in a storm. And now our case was very dismal indeed, for we all saw plainly that the sea went so high that the boat could not live, and that we should be inevitably drowned. As to making sail, we had none, nor if we had, could we have done anything with it. So we worked at the oar towards the land, though with heavy hearts, like men going to execution. For we all knew that when the boat came near the shores, she would be dashed into 1,000 pieces by the breach of the sea. However, we committed our souls to God in the most earnest manner, and the wind driving us towards the shore, we hastened our destruction with our own hands, pulling as well as we could towards land. What the shore was, whether rock or sand, whether steep or shoal, we knew not. The only hope that could rationally give us the least shadow of expectation was, if we might find some bay or gulf, or the mouth of some river, where by great chance we might have run our boat in, or got under the lee of the land, and perhaps made smooth water. But there was nothing like this appeared. But as we made nearer and nearer the shore, the land looked more frightful than the sea. After we had rowed, or rather driven about a league and a half, as we reckoned it, a raging wave, mountain like, came rolling astern of us, and plainly bade us expect the coup de grace. It took us with such fury that it overset the boat at once, and separating us as well from the boat as from one another, giving us no time to say, "Oh God!" for we were all swallowed up in a moment. Nothing can describe the confusion of thought which I felt when I sank into the water. For though I swam very well, yet I could not deliver myself from the waves so as to draw breath, till that wave, having driven me, or rather carried me, a vast way on towards the shore, and having spent itself, went back, and left me upon the land, almost dry, but half dead with the water I took in. I had so much presence of mind, as well as breath left, that seeing myself nearer the mainland than I expected, I got upon my feet and endeavored to make on towards the land as fast as I could, before another wave should return and take me up again. But I soon found it was impossible to avoid it, for I saw the sea come after me as high as a great hill, and as furious as an enemy, which I had no means or strength to contend with. My business was to hold my breath, and raise myself upon the water if I could, and so, by swimming, to preserve my breathing and pilot myself towards the shore. If possible, my greatest concern now being that the sea, as it would carry me a great way towards the shore when it came on, might not carry me back out again with it when it gave back towards the sea. The wave that came upon me again buried me at once 20 or 30 feet deep in its own body, and I could feel myself carried with a mighty force and swiftness toward the shore, a very great way. But I held my breath and assisted myself to swim still forward with all my might. I was ready to burst with holding my breath, when, as I felt myself rising up, so to my immediate relief I found my head and hands shoot out above the surface of the water. And though it was not 2 seconds of time that I could keep myself so, yet it relieved me greatly, gave me breath and new courage. I was covered again with water a good while, but not so long but I held it out, and finding the water had spent itself and began to return, I struck forward against the return of the waves, and felt ground again with my feet. I stood still a few moments to recover my breath, until the waters went from me, and then took my heels, and ran with what strength I had further towards the shore. But neither would this deliver me from the fury of the sea, which came pouring in after me again, and twice more I was lifted up by the waves and carried forward as before, the shore being very flat. The last time of these two had well nigh been fatal to me, for the sea, having hurried me along as before, landed me, or rather dashed me, against a piece of rock, and that with such force that it left me senseless, and indeed helpless, as to my own deliverance. For the blow, taking my side and breast, beat the breast as it were quite out of my body, and had it returned again immediately, I must have strangled in the water. But I recovered a little before the return of the waves, and seeing I should be covered again with the water, I resolved to hold fast by a piece of the rock, and so to hold my breath, if possible, till the wave went back. Now, as the waves were not so high as at first, being nearer land, I held my hold till the wave abated, and then fetched another run, which brought me so near the shore that the next wave, though it went over me, yet did not swallow me up as to carry me away. And the next run I took, I got to the mainland, where, To my great comfort, I clambered up the cliffs of the shore and sat me down upon the grass, free from danger and quite out of reach of the water. I was now landed and safe on shore, and began to look up and thank God that my life was saved. In a case wherein there was some minutes before scarce any room to hope, I believe it is impossible to express to the life what the ecstasies and transports of the soul are when it is so saved. And as I may say out of the very grave, and do not wonder now at the custom when a malefactor who has a halter about his neck is tied up and just going to be turned off and has a reprieve brought to him. I say, do not wonder that they bring a surgeon with it to let him blood that very moment they tell him of it, that the surprise may not drive the animal's spirits from the heart and overwhelm him. For sudden joys, like griefs, confound at first. I walked about on the shore, lifting up my hands and my whole being, as I may say, wrapped up in a contemplation of my deliverance, making 1,000 gestures and motions which I cannot describe, reflecting upon all my comrades that were drowned, and that there should not be one soul saved but myself. For as for them, I never saw them afterwards, or any sign of them, except 3 of the hats, 1 cap, and 2 shoes that were not fellows. I cast my eye to the stranded vessel, when the breach and froth of the sea being so big, I could hardly see it. It lay so far off, and considered, Lord, how was it possible I could get on shore? After I had solaced my mind with the comfortable part of my condition, I began to look around me to see what kind of place I was in and what was next to be done. And I soon found my comforts abate, and that, in a word, I had a dreadful deliverance. For I was wet, had no clothes to shift me, nor anything either to eat or drink to comfort me. Neither did I see any prospect before me but that of perishing with hunger or being devoured by wild beasts. And that which was particularly afflicting to me was that I had no weapon, either to hunt and kill any creature for my sustenance, or to defend myself against any other creature that might desire to kill me for theirs. In a word, I had nothing about me but a knife, a tobacco pipe, and a little tobacco in a box. This was all my provisions, and this threw me into such terrible agonies of mind that for a while I ran about like a madman. Night coming upon me, I began, with a heavy heart, to consider what would be my lot if there were any ravenous beasts in that country, as at night they always come abroad for their prey. All the remedy that offered to my thoughts at that time was to get up into a thick bushy tree like a fir, but thorny, which grew near me, and where I resolved to sit all night and consider the next day what death I should die. For as yet I saw no prospect of life. I walked about a furlong from the shore to see if I could find any fresh water to drink, which I did to my great joy. And having drank and put a little tobacco into my mouth to prevent hunger, I went to the tree and getting up into it, endeavored to place myself so that if I should sleep, I might not fall. And having cut me a short stick, like a truncheon for my defense, I took up my lodging, and having been excessively fatigued, I fell fast asleep and slept as comfortably as I believe a few could have done in my condition, and found myself more refreshed with it than I think I ever was on such an occasion. And that is the end of chapter 3 of Robinson Crusoe. I don't know what you thought. Poor Robinson. Now he's really in a pickle. Let me know what you think is going to happen from here on out. But he truly was shipwrecked on a desert island. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you his peace.